Alright guys, so now we're here for part 2 of my Nekusar the Mindrazor EDH deck. In this video I'm going to be going over some combos, some synergies, why I made specific choices, any kind of combos or little tricks I may have. So yeah, let's get right into it. So basically Nekusar makes my opponents draw extra cards, makes me draw extra cards, but whenever an opponent draws any cards, they take 1 damage per card. He really lends himself to a particular strategy, which is the strategy that I run. He has a pretty bad reputation because of what he does. He's not really fun to play against. He can really win pretty quickly once he hits the board. So yeah, let's go over my card choices and why I made them. I'm going to go over my 2 little tech spells here. They're both in here for the more or less the same utility purpose. You know, they both can return a permanent to its owner's hand. They can both kill a creature. Well, Grixis Charm can also pump my guys. Crosis Charm can destroy an artifact. So it gives me a lot of utility. I've mostly used it for the ability that they both have to return a permanent or to kill a creature. That's all I particularly use them for, and I just happen to like them. I like that they're both charms and that they're cool little kooky spells. So yeah, that's why I run those 2. I'm going to go with my creatures now, from casting cost highest to lowest. So first we're going to start with Niv-Mizzet the Firemind. You know, he's pretty well known. He's in there more or less because whenever I draw a card, he's going to deal 1 damage to my opponent. So when I start wheeling, my opponents are going to take 1 damage for every card they draw, and they're going to get 1 damage for every card I draw. So it really just lends itself to helping deplete their life that much quicker. Seizan, Perverter of Truth. You know, he really just helps move things along. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, they lose 2 life and draw 2 cards. So if he's down and Nekusar's down, they're going to draw 4 cards per turn. So they're going to take 4 damage and lose 2 life just with these 2 guys out. 4 cards, 6 total life lost. It's a pretty sweet deal. Psychosis Crawler, he more or less serves the same exact purpose as Niv-Mizzet, but what he does is a little stronger and a little weaker at the same time. He doesn't make my opponents, he doesn't, you know, inhibit any extra draw card, like Niv-Mizzet can tap to draw a card, but what he does is whenever I draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Because it's loss of life, it can't be prevented by certain things, and the fact that it's each opponent is very, very strong. Izzet Chronarch is in there, so when I cast him, I can get back one of my wheel cards or my copy cards. Same thing for Mnemonic Wall. He serves the exact same purpose, as does Anarchist, the exact same purpose, and Archaeomancer, the exact same purpose. You know, redundancy will help you win games quite a bit. Fate Unraveler here is basically an exact copy of Nekusar. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Fate Unraveler deals 1 damage to that player. You know, he does the exact same thing as Nekusar, minus the extra card drawn. But it's they have the 2 of them down. If you have these 2 down, Nekusar and Fate Unraveler, on their turn they're going to draw 2 cards and they're going to take 4 damage. So the damage starts to mount up really quickly. Jace's Archivist, 3 cost, 2/2 wizard, can pay a blue and tap it, and each play a wheel. So they discard the hand, they draw that many cards. It's being able to reuse it every turn, very, very nice. Master of Feats, at the beginning of each opponent's draw upkeep, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent draws a card. So that's just going to help further along the process. It's all about making my opponents draw and making them discard them also as quick as possible. I don't want to give them a lot of cards and then let them use them. I want to give them cards and make them lose them. Whirlpool Warrior, 3 cost, 2/2. When he comes into play, I shuffle the cards from my hand into my library and I draw that many cards. It only affects me, but then I pay a red, sacrifice him, and each player does it as well. So he wheels is what he does. Which is nice because I can play him if I don't happen to have a wheel in my hand, shuffle all the cards and draw that many cards. Hopefully I draw into a wheel and then I pay the red and everybody wheels. It's really nice. Izzet Guildmage is there because for 3 mana I can copy target sorcery and I can do it as many times as I have the mana for. A lot of the wheels happen to be sorceries, and well, actually all the wheels are sorceries, and a couple of them, what I generally do with him is I pay the 3 mana and I copy an instant, and I'll copy like my Reverberate or my Reiterate or my increasing Savagery, increasing Vengeance rather. That's what I'll do with him, is I copy my copy spell to be able to copy my wheel again. Nivix Guildmage, more or less the same purpose. For the 4 mana, though, I can copy an instant or sorcery. So for the 4 mana, I can just copy the wheel, or copy of the wheel, or copy whatever I need to copy at the time. Lots of copying going on. Copying and wheeling. That's pretty much how it wins. We have Kami the Crescent Moon, 2 cost, 1/3. At the beginning of each player's upstep, that player draws a card. Basically, he is Howling Mine on a body. And Duskmantle Guildmage, he's really nice. 2 cost, 2/2. When pay his first ability, whenever a card put in an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, that player loses 1 life. I have Nekusar down. I have Duskmantle Guildmage down. I cast a wheel, activate his ability. They lose 7 for discarding 7, and they lose 7 for drawing 7. 14 life loss for a total of 6 mana is not bad at all. And that pretty much sums up the creatures. Not a lot of creatures. They just serve the purpose of support rather than winning. I'll go over my 2 tutors. I run Increasing Ambition, mostly for the flashback. I'll be able to wheel it away, and then if I need something later on, I can pay the 8 mana, flash it back, tutor for 2 cards, probably get 2 wheels or a wheel and a copy spell, and just go on from there. And Demonic Collusion I like because I can buy it back. So if I need to tutor for something and I have some garbage in my hand that isn't necessarily helpful at the time, just discard those 2 cards and buy it back to my hand. Up next I have my X draw spells. I run Minds Aglow. This is really nice when it gets to be late game. Maybe I ran out of my wheels. Maybe I just don't have one. I'll play this and put all my mana into it. Maybe it's 8 or 9 mana. Everybody draws 8 or 9 cards, and if an opponent is silly enough to put mana into it, it gets a little bigger. But generally, they won't want to if Nekusar's out. And Blue Sun Zenith. This basically in my deck will act like a Banefire or something of that nature, where I'm going to pay the 3, pay 8, 9, 10 mana into it, make my opponent draw that many cards and lose that much life. Or if I need the cards, I can make myself draw that many cards, and if I have Psychosis Crawler out, every opponent loses that much life, so it just gets to be pretty cool. My 2 Planeswalkers that I have here, first one is Jace Beleren, mostly for the card draw. I'll keep +1ing him and +1ing him and +1ing him every one of my turns, so everybody draws or I'll take a little more damage. And Chandra the Firebrand is in here mostly for her -2. When you cast your next Instant or Sorcery spell, copy that spell and choose new targets for it. What I've done usually is I will use her ability, I'll cast my wheel, and then I'll copy my wheel with a copy spell, so it's going off 3 times. 21 damage is no joke. Up next, we get my artifacts in reverse casting cost. We start with Venser's Journal. This is nice for the no maximum hand size, and because I don't have a lot of creatures and I don't necessarily want to block with them usually, it helps get back some of the life loss with life gain from the cards in my hand. Then we have Teferi's Puzzle Box. This starts getting crazy. This card just inhibits craziness. So the way it works is, at the beginning of each player's draw step, if they have 7 cards, they just put those 7 cards at the bottom of the library and draw a new hand of 7, and then draw the cards for their turn. It's just, you have Nekusar down, and you take a lot of damage quickly, and it ruins people's plans. They can't really hold on to cards. Font of Mythos, 4 cost. Everybody draws 2 additional cards on their turn. Pretty basic. Temple Bell, tap it. Everybody draws a card. Pretty basic also. Howling Mine, 2 cost. Everybody draws an extra card on their turn. Also pretty basic. Elixir of Immortality helps me just go the distance. Once I've wheeled away a lot of my decks and people are still hanging around, I can shuffle all my cards back into my library, gain a little bit of life. Not the life isn't really that big a deal. It's mostly just to get all my wheel spells and copy spells back if need be for the late game. And we have Spellbook, 0 cost, no maximum hand size, very, very basic. Now we have my enchantments, also going from highest casting cost to lowest. Hive Mind. This card is just insane. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, each other player copies that spell. Each of those players may choose new targets for his or her copy. Now what's amazing about this is they don't get a choice on whether they cast it or not. They have to cast it for free. They don't have to pay the mana cost, but they have to cast it for free. And they can choose the target if they want to. So when I have Nekusar down and this down, and I cast a wheel, and it's let's say it's a 3-player game. So I cast my wheel, everybody else wheels. Then player B also has to cast their wheel now, and so everybody wheels. And then player C also has to cast their wheel, so everybody wheels. It just gets to be the amount of damage that these two will put out together, insane. absolutely insane. Force Fruition is very, very nice. What it does is whenever an opponent plays a spell, that player draws 7 cards. So I have Nekusar down, I have this down, you play a creature, you draw 7. You play a kill spell on Nekusar, you draw that 7 and take that 7 damage before Nekusar even dies. It's really, really helpful. Liliana the Void. What's better than making people wheel away into exile? Not a lot. You know, you have this on the board, when they wheel, straight into exile. So you don't even have to worry about graveyard shenanigans or graveyard hate. Spiteful Visions is the enchantment version of Nekusar. At the beginning of each player's draw step, they draw an additional card, and whenever a player draws a card, Spiteful Visions deals 1 damage to them. The downfall to this is that it also deals 1 damage to me, but, you know, if I have this down and Nekusar down and I wheel, they're taking 2 damage per card, and I'm taking 1 damage per card, so I can really just outrace them. Woods of Wind is nice. The next time you would draw a card this turn, each player returns a permanent he or she controls to his or her hand. What I can do with this is nice. If I can wheel, and then I discard my hand, and I could pay another 4 mana, and instead of drawing 7 cards, I'll only draw 3. And because I paid that 4 mana and skipped 4 of those cards, each opponent has to bounce 4 permanents. It gets really, really helpful late game when I have a lot of extra mana, and I go to wheel, and maybe I'll pay 7 and get no cards off it. And each player has to bounce 7 permanents. 7 permanents doesn't sound like a lot, but when you do it every single turn, it gets to be pretty good. Archmage Ascension. At the beginning of your end step, if you draw 2 or more cards this turn, you may put a quest counter on Archmage Ascension. As long as it has 6 or more counters, then you can, rather than drawing a card, you can tutor for a card. This is really nice. At the beginning of each end step, if you drew 2 or more cards. So what I can do is, as long as I'm drawing 2 cards on my turn, 2 cards on my opponent's turn, 2 cards on any turn, every time I draw 2 cards that turn, this gets a counter. Once this gets to 6 counters, I'm no longer drawing cards, I'm tutoring for cards. That becomes a huge, huge deal when I'm just tutoring specifically for wheels and copies. It will end the game very quickly. Words of Waste is also very nice. It's very similar to Words of Wind, but with this one, when I draw a card, I can instead pay 1, and what happens when I pay that 1, everybody has to discard a card. So I have Nekusar down, I have Words of Waste down, I cast a wheel, you take 7 damage, I pay an extra 7 into it, so instead of drawing 7, you have to discard those 7 that you just drew, and you're down to nothing in your hand. Megrim and Liliana's Caress, more or less the same function here. 2 cost and 3 cost. Megrim, whenever an opponent discards a card, it deals 2 damage to them. And whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. Pretty self-explanatory. Have these down when I wheel, people start taking damage or loss of life in addition to the damage that they're taking from drawing the cards. Mounts up really quick. And we have Waste Not. This card is an all-star in this deck because whenever an opponent discards a creature card, I get a 2/2 zombie token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, I get 2 black mana. And whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, I draw a card. When I wheel, you're probably going to be discarding all different kinds of cards. I get so much value off this, it's just insanity. You know, if I wheel and there's 2 other opponents and they both discard a creature, I get 2 creatures. If they both discard a land, I'll get 4 mana. It's really, really nice. If you're playing Nekusar, you have to play Waste Not. The value in it is just, it's great. Next up, we have my Mana Rocks. I'm not really going to go a lot into them. You know, they serve their purpose. They're Mana Rocks. I play all the Dimir Mana Rocks, the Rakdos Mana Rocks, and the Izzet Mana Rocks. You know, more or less just because they're Mana Rocks. I need to be able to get Nekusar quicker than everybody else. I need to be able to play my creature spell, my wheel spells, and my copy spells in the same turn. So just, it ramps me really quick. That's the whole point, is it just ramps. Up next, I have my wheel spells that I'm going to go over. They're basically how this deck more or less wins. So we first have Reforge the Soul. I've never actually got to Miracle it yet, but each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards. You know, that's what a wheel is for the most part. Incendiary Command is mostly used for the wheel effect at the end. Each player discards all the cards in his or her hand, then draws that many cards. But, you know, maybe I'll make them take 4 damage as well, or Pyroclasm to help clear the board, destroying a non-basic land. It's the other one I'll choose based on situation, but 10 times out of 10, I'm going to wheel and choose one of the other 2. I don't really care much about the other three. Rather, it's just those are all situational for me. It's the wheel that it's in here for. Then we have Wheel and Deal. Any number of target opponents each discards his or her hand and draw 7 card, and I draw a card. What's very nice about this card that I didn't realize upon first use of it is that it doesn't make me wheel. That's very, very nice. And I can choose any number of opponents, but I'll usually choose them all. 4 mana, make all of my opponents wheel, and then I still get to draw a card off it so it replaces itself in my hand. That's a lot of value coming out of this. It really, really is. Being able to make all my opponents wheel and I don't have to can really set me up because I can play this card and copy it. I'll draw 2 cards off that, and then I can wheel again and just go bananas with the damage on my opponents. Whispering Madness. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. I've seen 10, 15 cards come out of this card. The Cipher I haven't really found to be super relevant because I don't have a lot of attacking power, but it's nice to do and always have that threat on the board. I like to cast it, cipher it onto a creature, and once there's an opening, I'll swing with them. If not, people will generally want to kill that creature, so it becomes a target other than my other creatures. Molten Psyche is very nice. Each player shuffles the cards from his or her hand into his or her library, then draws that many cards. I'm not super keen on the fact that they're shuffling them in instead of discarding them. That's whatever. I mean, it's not great, but it's not terrible. The real cool thing about this is that they draw that many cards. The even better thing is that if you're metalcrafted, if you control 3 or more artifacts, Molten Psyche deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards they've drawn that turn. With the amount of artifacts I have, like my mana rocks and all my other artifacts I have, I usually am metalcraft for this. So there's been times where I had people draw 15, 20 cards, and when I cast this and I've copied it, they're taking 40, 50 damage. I've seen this card do a lot of damage for a small amount of mana. Windfall. Each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. Basically, it's a 3-mana version of Whispering Madness without the Cipher. Everybody discards, and we all draw equal to the greatest number drawn that way. It's very, very nice. The original, Wheel of Fortune, 3 mana, all players must discard their hands and draw 7 cards. The fact that this says that they have to draw 7 cards is cool because even if they only discard 1, they're still drawing 7, so Nekusar is still dealing 7 damage to them. Winds of Change, each player counts the cards in his or her hand, shuffles them into her or her deck, and then draws that many cards. This is just a 1-mana version of Windfall or a 1-mana version of Whispering Madness. Pretty much self-explanatory what it does. Shuffle away your cards, draw that many. And Wheel of Fate is a exact copy of Wheel of Fortune, but it doesn't have its own mana cost. I just have to suspend it. That's all. 2 mana, comes in 4 turns later. Each player discards his or her hand and draws 7 cards. Pretty basic, does what it does. No big deal. That's more or less how this deck wins, though, is off wheeling and wheeling and wheeling. And how I get a lot of value off of it is through my copy spells here. So the newest addition is Howl the Horde. Sorcery. I don't like that it's a sorcery, but I'll take it because of what it does. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for that copy. That's cool. But if you raid, if you attacked with a creature this turn, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell an additional time. So what I'll do is, if I have a zombie token out or even like a Jace's Archivist, I'll just swing with them. I don't care if they get blocked. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that they attacked with raid. So, my main phase, I'll do whatever I'm going to do. My attack phase, my combat phase rather, I'll attack with a guy. Because I attacked, I will now cast raid. I will cast Howl the Horde with the raid for 3 mana, and then cast a wheel. Now it's going to go off 3 times. Once for itself, and once for the copy, and once for the raided copy. It's pretty cool. Reiterate is in here because it's a 3-cost copy, and I can buy it back for 3. So late game, I can start doing it a lot. It's most effective with the ones with Wheel and Deal, where I don't have to wheel away my hand. I will never cast this and buy it back unless I can cast it multiple times in the same turn. If I'm going to cast my Wheel of Fate and I have enough mana, I could cast this, buy it back, and cast it again to copy that same spell twice. But other than that, if I'm just copying a wheel, I'm not going to pay the 3, because as soon as I put it back in my hand, I wheel it away. I'll just let it go. Reverberate, copy a spell for 2 mana. Also, Twin Cast, copy a spell for 2 mana. And then Increasing Vengeance has been very, very nice for me. 2-cost, copy a spell that I control. That's the downfall, is that it has to be a spell I control. But that's all I really want to copy anyways, for the most part, is my wheels. And then it has flashback for 5 mana, but if I flash it back, I can copy it twice. So there's been times where I play a Wheel and Deal, or, I'll play like a Wheel of Fortune. I'll copy it with my Increasing Vengeance, let that copy resolve, it's in the graveyard, and then I will pay the 5 mana and now target the original copy of Wheel of Fate again, and now it's going off 4 times. It provides a lot of utility for me, a lot of surprise factor. People may do the math and think they're going to be safe for a turn, when in reality, I'm shooting the spell 2 more times at their face. And then lastly, I just have all my lands, my basic lands, whatever, basic lands, no big deal. The only real non-basics I run a Halimar Depths to set up my draws. Got to get those wheels out. Bajuka Bog. I like to exile someone's graveyard, especially when I'm dumping tons of cards in it. A couple tri-lands. A couple dual lands. Nothing really crazy in the dual lands. This is more of, I guess you could call it a budget mana base. I have Watery Grave and Blood Crypt and Steam Vents, but for the most part, it's a pretty budget mana base. I didn't put too much money into the mana base. It was mostly into acquiring all the wheels and stuff like that, and it's, it is what it is. I don't really need the crazy efficient mana base when I have a lot of mana rocks, and they're all colorless to cast. But yeah, that more or less sums up all the different cards I play in my Nekusar deck and why I play them. He's very degenerate. He's not very fun to play against. I mean, it's one of those generals I'm mostly playing with myself. I'm mostly playing a game by myself with everyone else who's watching me. Because I'm going to cast a wheel, I'm going to cast a wheel, I'm going to cast a wheel. And what I mean by he plays by himself is that he'll do what he does almost regardless of their board state. Regardless of how many creatures they have, regardless of what they have for protection on the board. I'm going to cast spells, I'm going to wheel, he's going to deal damage. And that's just how he wins. He doesn't really care what you have going on. He's not friendly, he's not nice. He's a zombie. He just wants to hurt you. That's more or less how he wins. But thank you for tuning in to part 2. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you would make for changes or additions, anything you do and don't like. Played with them, against them, that kind of deal. But yeah, like, comment, and subscribe, and thanks a lot.